There is a frequency playing just beneath human hearing, a low drone engineered by men who traded their souls for science. When the world stopped burning, the victors didn't destroy the architects of the apocalypse, they gave them new names and white picket fences. The monsters didn't die, they simply moved next door, armed with a blank check to dissect the American mind. The static on your screen isn't just dead air, it's the lingering echo of a devil's bargain struck in the pitch-black shadows. While the history books show smiling parades and torn-up ticker tape, the true architects of tomorrow were quietly wiping the blood from their surgical instruments. The official narrative insists the nightmare ended with the fall of a vile empire, leaving behind a sanitized world of peace. But the true war, the quiet, invisible war, is just beginning. In the smoldering ashes of Europe, American intelligence officers aren't just hunting for stolen art or hidden gold. They are hunting for minds. The Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency is formed with a singular, desperate directive: secure the scientific elite of the Nazi regime before the Soviets do. This is the genesis of Operation Paperclip. The officers move like shadows through the wreckage, armed with the Ozenberg list, a catalogue of scientists, engineers, and doctors who fueled the Nazi war machine. These aren't just pencil-pushing bureaucrats, these are the architects of the V-2 rockets that rained fire on London, the masterminds of suffocating chemical weapons, and the very doctors of the concentration camps who traded human lives for data points. The ethical dilemma is suffocating, tasting like copper and ash in the mouth, but in the freezing dawn of the Cold War, morality is a luxury the Pentagon decides it cannot afford. So, they bring them over. Over 1,600 of them. Their dossiers are scrubbed clean in dimly lit, smoke-filled rooms. War crimes are erased with the cold, unfeeling stroke of a pen. Paperclips are literally attached to their newly sanitized files, marking them for entry into the United States. They are given American homes with white picket fences, American laboratories with humming fluorescent lights, and bottomless American budgets. They become neighbors, colleagues, and pioneers of the atomic age. The public is fed a sanitized, glossy narrative of reformed brilliant minds helping the free world. But beneath the patriotic veneer, the stomach-churning stench of Dachau and Buchenwald lingers in the sterile corridors of American research facilities. We traded justice for technology. We imported the crushing nausea to fight the darkness. But the question that still echoes in the classified vaults, smelling of old paper and cold sweat, is this: what happens when you invite the devil into your home, just because he knows how to build a better lock? The men in the shadows step into the light, but the shadows cling to them like a second skin. Consider Hubertus Strughold. Today, he is widely hailed by some as the father of space medicine. His research paved the way for the triumphant Apollo missions. But the sanitized biographies omit the chilling prologue, a prologue written in ice and agony. Before he was designing pressurized suits for American astronauts, Strughold was a prominent, unquestioned figure in the Nazi medical establishment. He was linked to the horrific hypothermia and high-altitude experiments conducted on the desperate, freezing prisoners of Dachau. Human beings, treated as entirely disposable test subjects, were frozen in vats of ice water to see exactly how long it would take for their hearts to stutter and stop. When the war ended, the US military didn't see a war criminal responsible for unimaginable suffering, they saw a highly valuable asset. They brought him to Texas. They gave him a pristine laboratory. The agonizing screams of the concentration camps were replaced by the low, mechanical hum of fluorescent lights, the sterile smell of antiseptic, and the scratching of pens on clipboards. The transition was seamless, almost mechanical in its cruelty. The knowledge extracted from torture was quietly, systematically integrated into American textbooks. The doctors who had viewed human life as raw material for the Reich were now laying the groundwork for the most advanced military and scientific programs on Earth. They taught an entirely new generation of American researchers the terrifying value of cold, detached experimentation. The moral infection spread invisibly, a slow rot beneath the skin. If the ends justified the means in defeating the Soviets, what boundaries were left to cross? The sterile, brightly lit environments masked the festering rot underneath. The architects of terror were now designing the future. If these men were given a blank check, a quiet room, and a subject strapped to a chair, what blueprint were they using for the human mind? The rocket scientists get the glory in the history books, their smiling faces splashed across Life magazine as they confidently promised the moon and the stars. But the true, stomach-churning horrors of Operation Paperclip do not unfold on the sunny launch pads of Florida. They unfold in the biological and psychological sectors, in places hidden far from the public eye, where the air feels heavy and tastes like copper. The Cold War, the strategists realize in dark, smoke-filled rooms, isn't just a race for space, it is a brutal, invisible battle for the human psyche. The military knows that the next battlefield is the mind itself. The scientists brought over under Paperclip possess unparalleled, terrifying knowledge of chemical warfare, suffocating nerve agents, and brutal interrogation techniques refined in the blood-stained mud of the camps. At places like Camp Evans in New Jersey, the research begins quietly behind razor wire fences and armed guards. The focus deliberately shifts from physical destruction to total psychological control. The government is terrified, sweating under the glare of interrogation lamps. Theories of brainwashing, spurred by the strange, hollow-eyed confessions of American prisoners returning from the Korean War, ignite a firestorm of deep-seated paranoia within the newly minted CIA. They become obsessed with the terrifying idea that the Soviets have mastered a dark art of mind control. They need a weapon that leaves no physical trace, no jagged shrapnel, no lingering radiation. They need a definitive way to break a mind, tear down its natural defenses, and rebuild it from scratch to serve the state without question. The laboratories hum with a quiet, frantic energy, the fluorescent lights flickering like dying stars. The scientists who engineered the gas chambers are now tasked with engineering an inescapable cage for the human soul. The transition is chillingly seamless. When the rockets finally reach the sky, illuminating the heavens with the blinding promise of tomorrow, what darker, unseen terrors are left for the scientists to conquer in the suffocating darkness down below. Enter the chemists, the quiet men who prefer the sterile isolation of test tubes to the brutal, deafening physics of ballistics. The newly formed CIA, absolutely terrified of falling behind in an invisible, paranoid war of Soviet mind control superiority, launches an aggressive, entirely clandestine research program. They recruit Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, a brilliant, idiosyncratic chemist with a terrifying, open-ended mandate: find a truth serum, no matter the human cost. The dark expertise of the Paperclip scientists provides the necessary, rotting foundation for his obsessive work. They methodically explore every chemical avenue, pulling from the horrific, meticulously recorded data of Nazi biological experiments, the pages still smelling of formaldehyde. And then, a breakthrough arrives from a quiet Swiss laboratory, delivered in a nondescript vial. They discover a synthetic compound known as lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD. It is a terrifyingly elegant substance. It is completely colorless. It is completely odorless. And it is unimaginably potent in microscopic quantities. It doesn't just alter reality, it violently fractures it, tearing down the fundamental walls of perception until the subject is left gasping in cold sweat. The CIA genuinely believes they have found the Holy Grail. They believe it could be the ultimate, invisible weapon of the Cold War. In a move of staggering, reckless audacity, they secretly begin purchasing the entire world's supply of the drug, hoarding it like dark magic. The sterile laboratories are transformed into brutal engines of psychological warfare. The fragile boundary between clinical observation and malicious, torturous orchestration shatters completely. They are no longer just observing the human mind, they are actively poisoning it to see exactly how it breaks, recording the tremors and the terror. The ethical lines are entirely erased in the feverish pursuit of absolute control. How many silent drops of chemical madness does it take to permanently dissolve a human soul, leaving nothing but a compliant, shivering shell behind? Project Incultra is officially born in the deep shadows of the intelligence apparatus. It is not a single experiment, but a sprawling, terrifying, migraine-inducing web of 149 classified subprojects hidden securely behind the respectable, ivy-covered facades of elite universities, prestigious hospitals, and towering federal prisons. The sheer scale of the operation is absolutely staggering, its cold fingers touching almost every corner of American institutional life. The subjects chosen are not willing volunteers. They are the vulnerable, the marginalized, the utterly forgotten, incarcerated prisoners locked in concrete cells, desperate drug addicts seeking a fix, and isolated mental patients abandoned by society. People who cannot fight back and whose desperate complaints will never be believed. The sensory details of these black sites are profoundly chilling. The sterile, overpowering smell of rubbing alcohol desperately masking the sharp, metallic scent of cold sweat and fear. The incessant, maddening ticking of cheap wall clocks in windowless, soundproof interrogation rooms. The sudden, terrifying onset of a chemically induced psychosis that violently tears the subject from consensus reality, leaving them shivering in the dark. The researchers, funded by bottomless black budgets and operating completely unseen by the public eye, work with total, terrifying impunity. They push the dosages higher and higher, ignoring the rising heart rates and dilated pupils. They are desperately trying to find the precise chemical threshold to completely wipe a memory clean, to compel an unwilling target to commit an assassination, or to create the perfect, unthinking courier. The victims scream in rooms specifically designed to swallow sound, their voices dying against padded walls. The doctors take meticulous, detached notes on their suffering, their basic humanity entirely stripped away. Like and subscribe to keep your mind safe, because if the very medical institutions built and trusted to heal you are secretly funded by the darkest shadows of the state, who can you possibly trust when the lights finally go out? The nightmare cannot be contained within American borders, it quietly bleeds north, a slow-moving stain. In Montreal, a distinguished psychiatrist named Dr. Ewan Cameron becomes the ultimate architect of psychological erasure. Secretly funded through a covert CIA front organization, he conducts horrific, mind-shattering experiments at the Allen Memorial Institute. He builds what he chillingly calls sleep rooms. Vulnerable patients seeking routine treatment for minor ailments like postpartum depression or mild anxiety are placed into chemically induced, vegetative comas lasting for agonizing weeks at a time. While they lie completely paralyzed in the dimly lit dark, their skin pale and clammy, he utilizes a technique he dubs psychic driving. Cold tape recorders are placed directly under their pillows, playing a continuous, inescapable, endlessly repeating loop of recorded messages. You are a bad mother. You are entirely worthless. No one loves you. The agonizing, tinny recordings play hundreds of thousands of times into their defenseless, sleeping minds, burning the words into their subconscious. When that isn't enough, he subjects them to extreme, punishing electroshock therapy, using hundreds of times the normal, safe voltage to induce absolute, permanent, depatterning. He wants to wipe their minds completely clean, to reduce them to a blank, shivering slate. Real victims, like a woman named Velma Orlikow, suffer catastrophic, irreversible damage. They lose their most precious, formative memories. They lose their core identities, their sense of self violently ripped away. They lose the simple, fundamental ability to recognize the faces of their own children or remember their own names. They leave the hospital as hollow, trembling shells, their minds permanently shattered by a doctor they trusted to heal them. What exactly is a human being if their entire history and memories are wiped away like chalk on a dusty blackboard, leaving only a cold, empty void? The cold, clinical horror inevitably bleeds into a bizarre, voyeuristic absurdity with the inception of Operation Midnight Climax. In the vibrant, bustling, neon-lit heart of San Francisco, the CIA establishes highly classified safehouses. They are meticulously furnished to look like typical, somewhat seedy civilian apartments, complete with cheap floral wallpaper and the lingering smell of stale cigarette smoke. The agency takes an astonishing, perverse step. They actively hire local prostitutes, placing them securely on the covert government payroll, instructing them to lure unsuspecting, ordinary men off the street. Once inside the dimly lit, claustrophobic safe house, the men are offered a casual, seemingly innocent drink. Without their knowledge or consent, their cocktails are heavily spiked with massive, unpredictable doses of LSD. Behind carefully constructed, cold two-way mirrors, CIA officers sit quietly in the dark. They sip cold martinis, the ice clinking softly, and smoke cigarettes, watching the terrifying psychological unspooling of American citizens. They take detached, clinical notes on the men's violently rising panic, the sweat beading on their foreheads, their terrifying, vivid hallucinations, and their total, humiliating loss of bodily and mental control. It is a government-funded, voyeuristic nightmare operating on a massive, terrifying scale. The vibrant, busy streets of America have secretly become an open-air laboratory for the intelligence community. The everyday citizens walking the pavement are the unwitting guinea pigs, entirely oblivious to the cold, calculating eyes watching them from the shadows. The agency treats the minds of its own people as expendable collateral in a covert war without distinct, physical battlefields. The critical line between essential national security and perverse, deeply illegal criminal activity is completely obliterated by the men behind the glass. When the very government sworn to protect its citizens becomes the ultimate voyeur of your deepest, drug-induced, sweating nightmares, where in the world do you hide? The darkness conjured by these terrifying programs inevitably turns inward, consuming its own creators like a starving animal. Enter Dr. Frank Olson, a highly cleared, deeply involved biological warfare scientist working for the U.S. Army. He knows the classified secrets of Camp Evans. He knows the sickening reality of the brutal interrogations. At a secluded rural retreat in deep Maryland, ostensibly meant to be a relaxing, restorative getaway for stressed intelligence officers, his CIA colleagues decide to violently test their own weapon on an insider. They secretly spike his after-dinner Cointreau with a massive, mind-altering dose of LSD. Olson, completely unprepared and unsuspecting, experiences a severe, terrifying psychological break. The drug violently shatters his mind, plunging him into a deep, inescapable state of intense, suffocating paranoia and racing heartbeats. He becomes utterly convinced he is being hunted, seeing shadows moving in the corners of his vision. Days later, trembling, terrified, and drenched in a cold sweat, he plummets from the window of his tiny room on the 13th floor of the Statler Hotel in the heart of New York City. His body shatters on the cold, unforgiving pavement below, the sound echoing through the night. The government immediately, predictably labels it a tragic, inexplicable suicide due to severe stress. His grieving, confused family is left entirely in the dark, fed carefully constructed lies and half-truths for decades. But the chilling whisper of cold-blooded, calculated murder never fades. The deep suspicion that they violently silenced a man who simply knew far too much about the biological horrors and brutal interrogation techniques born of the Paperclip legacy lingers heavily in the hushed halls of power. It was a brutal, unmistakable message to anyone considering blowing the whistle. If the architects of the shadows can casually toss one of their own cleared scientists out a 13-story window without consequence, what on earth would they do to you? The year is 1973. The thick walls of institutional secrecy are finally beginning to crack and close in under mounting pressure. CIA Director Richard Helms, gripped by the suffocating fear of imminent exposure in the massive wake of the Watergate scandal, issues a desperate, sweeping order. He demands the total, immediate destruction of all existing culture files. In the concrete bowels of Langley, the heavy industrial shredders run continuously for days, chewing through decades of terrifying secrets with a deafening, mechanical roar. It is a frantic, desperate scramble to systematically erase the past, a terrifyingly exact mirror of the precise scrubbing of the Nazi war records that began this whole dark saga decades prior. The guilty men are desperately trying to vanish into the thick fog of history, the smell of burning paper filling the air. But in their panicked haste, sweating under the fluorescent lights, they make a critical error. They miss a small, forgotten cache of mundane financial documents safely stored in an entirely different, nondescript building. In 1975, the famous Church Committee stumbles upon this paper trail and violently blows the heavy lid off the entire operation. For a brief, shining moment, the American public gets a terrifying, deeply fragmented glimpse into the pitch-black vertigo their government has been operating in. They see the terrifying shadows of the sleep rooms, the claustrophobic safe houses, and the spiked drinks. But the true, horrifying scope of the human damage is gone forever, shredded into unrecognizable, dusty confetti. The most damning secrets will never see the light of day. We only saw the jagged, bloody tip breaking the surface. How much of the colossal iceberg did we actually see, and what terrifying monsters are still lurking in the freezing, pitch-black water, waiting for their chance to return? The true, enduring legacy of Operation Paperclip is a masterfully whitewashed history, a story rewritten by the victors in cold, detached ink. We boldly celebrate the triumphant moon landing, staring in awe at the stars and the immense power of the Saturn V, while deliberately, comfortably ignoring the blood soaked deep into the blueprints. The sinister methods of control and coercion didn't end when the Church Committee finally closed its doors, they merely evolved, becoming far more sophisticated and vastly harder to see. The psychological warfare, the subtle manipulation of the masses, the deep, pervasive surveillance architecture that entirely defines the modern era, the dark, poisonous seeds for all of this were planted by the men we quietly smuggled in under the cover of darkness. The unquiet ghosts of Dachau's freezing victims and the shattered, trembling survivors of ultra sleep rooms continue to haunt the very margins of our modern world. They are the unseen, rotting foundation of the present. The static, humming noise of the modern surveillance state, the cold, calculating algorithm that silently watches your every move, is their lingering, inescapable echo. The United States may have won the long, bitter Cold War, but we quietly traded away a crucial piece of our fundamental humanity in a desperate devil's bargain. The architects of terror integrated perfectly into the massive machinery of the state, their unspeakable crimes forgiven in exchange for raw power. The damning files were shredded into dust, the scientists died peacefully in comfortable beds, and the public went back to a fitful sleep. As you stare blankly at the glowing screens that define your reality, feeling the hum of the electronics vibrate in your teeth, you must ask yourself, are the ghosts of Paperclip finally dead, or are we simply living out our lives inside the invisible, inescapable cage they quietly designed for us?